moving on to long ball number 2 here on Wednesday. It is January, so transfer season is one of the main topics to discuss. So we'll take a look at MLS related transfers now. To top the list, probably the biggest name floating around MLS circles outside of Marcus Rashford to Seattle, which doesn't seem real. Something with a little bit more traction seems to be San Diego FC is on the short list for Kevin De Bruyne, and apparently he prefers an MLS move over something in the Middle East.
Okay, imagine you are Kevin De Bruyne, Rob. Imagine you are world football superstar Kevin De Bruyne, one of the best midfielders of his generation. Just try. I know it's difficult, but try. He's one of my favorite players of his generation. I love Kevin De Bruyne. He's incredible.
Him at Wolfsburg was something else.
He has been playing and playing and playing and playing and then playing some more, and then he gets hurt. And then he comes back and they go, Kevin, you got to play a lot. And he goes, okay. And then he gets hurt. And then he goes to the media and he says, we play too much. And then he gets hurt. And then he plays some more. And then he plays some more. And then he plays some more. And then he ponders his Belgium future because he's been playing too much. If Kevin De Bruyne came to Major League Soccer, I would imagine that is a reduction in the number of games he would have to play. Now, there's the travel thing. That I don't think you could dismiss that. I know it's MLS is not as intense as playing in the Premier League. That's true from week to week.
In some regards, yeah.
Yeah, and certainly the training sessions are not going to be at that level, right? Now, but I think here you are talking about a certain personality, right? That unlike a Marcus Rashford, who linked to Seattle, out of just pure wild, what else? Where else?
A guy talked about it once in a room.
Yeah, other people. Yeah, like, hey, would we like to have Marcus Rashford? Yeah, I think we would. How much would it cost? More than we have. Okay, I guess we're not getting Marcus Rashford. I mean, that's how that goes. I do think Kevin De Bruyne is at the point in his career, like he checks all the boxes for a potential MLS late career signing, doesn't he? He's accomplished nearly everything he can. He's not going to win a World Cup with Belgium. He's accomplished nearly everything he can on the club side of the game. What else is there more? What else is there to do for Kevin De Bruyne? Take a vacation. Spend your life, the rest of your playing career. I don't like. Okay,
I was going to say I'm sure some people would love to hear that a move to MLS would be like a vacation. But I want one last little note on him is the success or non-success of a DP acquisition in MLS seems to be very mentality oriented. You said MLS vacation, that didn't work so well for Steven Gerrard, but other folks with, a little bit more grit between their teeth at the proposal of coming to MLS seem to do better. Does he have the mentality to do so?
You take a risk, right? You take a risk if you sign a player like Kevin De Bruyne, if you are San Diego in this case, because that's the club that's been linked to him. You do take that risk. You are hoping that he shows up with the right mentality, that as much as this is a reduction in the intensity of his playing career, that he's going to understand he still has to put in a certain level in order to achieve something. And he's going to be, if he does join San Diego, he's joining an expansion team. And there's no guarantees that any of that's going to go well for San Diego. Just because we've seen some expansion teams in their first year surprise people doesn't mean that it's going to work that way for San Diego FC. When I say vacation, what I mean is he would most likely retire from Belgium, from international duty. He passed on October games because of his workload, right? And he has been talking about the workload more than anybody else out there in world football, I think. Him and Rodri, right? But Rodri came after De Bruyne. De Bruyne set that tone. He was the one saying, hey, this is way too much soccer. So if he can clock a check, spend his days when he's not playing in beautiful San Diego, California, where I hear the weather is just about as perfect as it can possibly be, also, hopefully compete for a thing here or there, right? There are maybe some guys who had a bad mentality, but I do think a lot of players are realizing that they want to achieve something here. They don't want it to be a stain on their record, and they certainly, a lot of them, I mean, you look at Messi, you look at Suarez, Busquets, Alba, the crew in Miami, and there are other examples of players who came over despite having achieved things in Europe. they're still competitive people, right? They didn't
Yeah.
stop being competitive people. This is a problem that a lot of players have when they retire. They go, how do I replace this thing that I have where I have to win and go out and compete all the time? So as long as that still exists for Kevin De Bruyne, then it's a possibility it could work. Now, this is worth mentioning, right? KY718. Lorenzo Insigne enters the chat. Now, there are rumors that Insigne could be out in Toronto. They're trying to figure out a way to get him out. Obviously, that has not been good. Obviously, that has been an absolute disaster. Insigne is not a player who showed up, who gave enough of himself when he was here in Major League Soccer. Bernadeschi maybe a little bit less, but then also like just that whole thing was mismanaged by Toronto in terms of the targets. And again, can't guarantee that Kevin De Bruyne would work or that this is even real in the sense that there's a deal on the table and he's considering it. I just have seen enough here. And people like Tom Boger, people that know things, have said there's some circling around each other, that there's still some talk, that De Bruyne is still open to this. So I just think it's worth mentioning.
KY also throws in the name Shaqiri. And while that didn't go perfectly for Shaqiri, I saw him live a few times, and it just looked like he was the wrong piece in that puzzle. That was not the guy that the Fire needed at that moment. They didn't have a lot to work with, and he was a bit of an accessory player.
Right.
He wasn't going to lift the whole boat there for the Fire. Other moves across MLS, Alan Pulido from Sporting Kansas City to Chivas de Guadalajara.
Back to Chivas. This is what a bailout for Sporting Kansas City.
Right.
That Chivas is going to take Alan Pulido off their hands for a decent chunk of money.
I mean, was his situation part of what weighed them down this year?
I mean, Pulido was a sunk cost thing because he was making a lot of money and eating up a DP slot and not really delivering. Now, again, this could be just like we talked about Shaqiri and that being a Fire problem as much as it was a Shaqiri. By the way, Shaqiri, jerk, kind of a jerk. Like just be aware. You knew what Jordan Shaqiri was before he arrived, okay? So that the attitude and the personality is maybe something you should have considered if you were Chicago Fire.
He's a square man with sharp edges.
But you also do have a club that was poorly run and a personnel around him that wasn't good enough to help him. That could be part of the problem in Kansas City. I think they had some nice pieces. They got old. That's part of the problem. It's still kind of a marvel that Peter Vermees keeps holding on to that job, but I think that they just don't know any other way at this point. And I like Peter a lot, but I just don't think, it's shown that he is caught up or staying caught up with the rest of Major League Soccer. But if they get Pulido off the books and he goes back to Guadalajara, then this is a big let off for them. He didn't deliver enough on what they paid him. And obviously injury was part of the story for Pulido as well. But they made a bet on him. They went ambitious. They spent some money on him. He scored a couple of goals, not enough, and now they get to move on. I think everybody can be happy here, including Alan Pulido.
In other Alan news, Alan Velasco rumored that Boca Juniors, the Argentine Giants, throwing upwards of $11 million his way.
Yeah, that one is interesting too, right? Has he been good enough in Major League Soccer at the age of 22 to justify that kind of spend from Boca Juniors? And I think I actually saw that Estudiantes was also pondering a move for Velasco.
Huh.
It is, I've seen this comment a couple places. It is fascinating that you've got the South American clubs stepping up to bail out or buy some players from Major League Soccer. That's not the direction I think a lot of us thought this was going to go.
The arrow doesn't usually point south for these guys.
Well, it hadn't for a while because the money was all messed up. In Argentina especially, but Brazil wasn't flush with cash. But now, John Textor is down there making things happen at Botafogo. I think there's more money in the mix. There's money coming to these clubs from other sources now with Club World Cup and things like that. And it's interesting to see these teams kind of go, well, we're not going to pry 22-year-olds out of Europe, but we can maybe go get a player like Alan Velasco, who is clearly talented and maybe, again, hasn't delivered everything that FC Dallas wanted, although that could also be an FC Dallas problem. But is Argentine, right? This is a bring him home. This is a get a domestic player kind of situation, and you, I guess if this is the market for MLS, good for MLS, and good for FC Dallas, and now they just have to figure out how to spend that money if they do indeed sell Alan Velasco.
And then this is a little bit of a random, but last note on here. Do you think that Jalen Neal acquired by Montreal moves the needle at all for Montreal? Does that raise their status?
Montreal status? I mean, I think this was again one of those deals that made sense for both parties. Jalen Neal gets a chance to go start in Montreal after some bumpy moments in Los Angeles on his rise into the first team. Then you have the Galaxy in desperate need of some cap relief. And as champions, what everybody on your roster does is they come with their hands out and they go, hey, I just helped you win a championship. Give me more cash. Please give me more. Give me more. And again, the Galaxy were already up against it. They had some things that were going to be problematic for them. So they get some GAM. Jalen Neal gets to go play and eat poutine, I guess. I don't know what else he can do in Montreal. I've been there once. Seems like a nice place. Go explore Montreal. But I think, again, I like this move for Jalen Neal because he's going to get an opportunity to be tested as a first-choice center back. Montreal has always been such an odd place.
Yeah, I don't understand it because they've had some really top-tier players, but they're a lot of the times a bit obscure.
Well, you have interesting ownership there. Joey Saputo and the Saputo family, right? And now he has Bologna in his portfolio, and it seems like that has taken over the primacy for the Saputos, which means that Montreal has kind of been left to wither on the vine a bit. But if you're gonna get better quickly in Major League Soccer, the best thing to do is to get MLS players who you think can be good enough to make you better, right? This is what Bruce Arena is doing in San Jose. He's just bringing a bunch of guys he already knows and just trying to make that team competent. So if that's what Montreal is doing, and Jalen Neal's not nearly as proven as some of the guys that Bruce Arena is bringing in, but he's got talent. Right? He's not talented. He just hasn't been consistently playing so that we can get a run on Jalen Neal, and hopefully that's going to work out for him. I think from a national team perspective, you want Jalen Neal to thrive in Montreal because there aren't a lot of center backs kind of in the pipeline at that age that we can say this is a guy for the future. He's 21 years old. Let's see what happens.
Mike Thomas giving my first genuine laugh of the day, saying he's full of Bologna, if you ask me. Moving on to you got that's the worst thing I get in the mornings is the distasteful glance from Jason for a dad joke.
You guys don't know that Rob showed me his dad joke book that he was gifted for Christmas. So get ready for that. If you're like, oh, what I want with my soccer is more dad jokes, here you go. Morning Kick Around is here for you.
Yeah, I got some